myself. We're back home. It's the same place, pretty close where Daryl's from. We would introduce and say, Wanda Bajou, Ninda Weva Anandav, Gazisi Kwedesh Nakas, Makoderam, Nishabi Kwe Indao, Bawati in Jujuba. So my name is Sun Woman, and that's how I address all of creation. I'm in your house, in your big house here. And that's how I would address in the big house. And I am Bear Clan, and I'm from a place in the Big Rapids, so it's Sault Ste. Marie. That's where my origins are. My home is from my mother's side is from Birch Island, and my father's side is Rankin Reserve, So I guess we're ready to go here.
What's the right one?
Yeah, we got the right one. Yeah. Okay. So I was going to let you do a little bit of exercising here. I still might, but I know we're pressed for time and we want to move ahead. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about this, what I've been asked to do here. So it's the stream was environmental health addresses all the cultural, physical, chemical, and biological factors. It encompasses the assessment and control of environmental factors that can potentially affect health. Health is created and lived by people within the settings of their everyday life, where they learn and play, their environment, their surroundings. So the question that I was asked to talk about was, do policy development and delivery of health messages keep up with these changes? And it would be really quick if I just answered a yes or no, wouldn't it be? Yeah? But no, I have to go on a big long spiel. But it's going to be a really interesting one because it actually is supportive of what everyone else has said, all the other previous presenters of what they have shared here today, and the importance of certain ingredients in research and certain ingredients we have to consider when we move into action. So before attempting to provide this answer, we need to first set the stage, our Indigenous stage. It would be your Maori stage, it would be our Anishinaabe stage. We set the stage on our terms and our turf. That's how we're going to set that. Yeah. Whose definition of health are we using? So the question becomes, whose definition of health it is? And when I get back to the bottom, how does this thing work actually? You know, with this little pointer. Oh yeah. The bottom. Who decided to define health promotion down here? Well, it really was who, wasn't it? Yeah. It was the World Health Organization. Came up with the whole term of health promotion way back in with the Adelaide Charter, was that it? Yeah, Adelaide Charter was that, okay? So we're looking at whose definition of health are we using, and if we indigenize health, what is it? What is it going to look like? How is it going to move us into action? How is it going to produce the results that are changing for our communities into total health? Yeah. When we talk about or participate in health education, what are we doing? How are we going about, again, action? It all has to do with action. It's great that we come up with research, we come up with recommendations, but if they sit on a shelf, then we're not doing enough. Yeah? Do we have choices in the kinds of education we participate, or is that dictated by an outside body of foreign governance? And so in Canada, I'm going to talk about this a whole lot more tomorrow, and I have a gazillion slides so you can actually see where it is that I work and what it is that I do. But our children in the far north, in the remote areas of Northern Ontario, 33 of the 49 member nations are remote. You can fly in only or access those communities by winter road, which it is winter now, but it hasn't been cold enough for all those roads to be open. Those kids are flown down from their communities because they don't have schools to go to school in the urban centers. Sorry.
If anyone is driving a silver Holden Cruise, four-door sedan, that's going to be towed right now. So I just needed to let you know. If you have a silver Holden Cruise, a four-door sedan, it's being towed. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. So how are we engaging people in this thing called health education or health promotion? And what is the measurement of efficacy that we're going to use? So I have a lot of questions. I don't necessarily have all of the answers, but I know during the next 3 days and into when we all return back home, that we're going to continue to ponder these questions and come up with what is moving us in a good way. So what brings us back to the good life? And I think Daryl, you touched upon a little bit. To live a good life. That is what our language says, is that we need to live in a good way. In harmony with all of creation, not just one-on-one, but with every living being. And this is why it's a great thing to have these conversations in your big house here, because it does lend itself to us speaking truth. That's truth. Yeah? So one definition of research is this. Research is defined as a systematic search for facts. And the facts are a statement about something that has occurred. Therefore, education and research, as we engage and participate in now, bring about little fundamental change. And I just want to read you a little something here about education that I have. It says, education in the conventional sense has not benefited Aboriginal people. When we look up the meaning of education, this is what it said: instruction or training by which people, generally young, learn to develop and use their mental, moral, and physical powers. What may be questioned here is who benefits. In accordance with Euro-Canadian standards and values, is develop mentally means to objectify. To develop morally means to adopt the male gender-specific privileged moral position. To develop physically means to be physically competitive. Conventional education is problematic. I say this because the primary focus of education is development of the mind. Education takes what is known and passes this old knowledge down from one generation to the next, and this process becomes static because the future is calculated by the empirical, which is past knowledge. Alternative pedagogical approaches that may enhance this new indigenous knowledge differ from the conventional model. Real thought integrates the heart, mind, body, and spirit, and the spirit cannot allow for the objectification process because everything is experienced as living. Yeah? I'm sure you have a similar type of understanding of that as well. And the imagination allows for the envisionment of the future, which conventional systems of education delegitimizes. The imagination is delegitimized because to imagine the future is not a provable fact in terms of conventional wisdom. Experience is a direct link to knowledge that is not a widely accepted form of knowledge. This may be due to the subjective nature of the experience of individuals. For example, I may say that I know that racism exists because I experience it. A person who is white may say back to me that he or she knows racism does not exist because he or she does not experience it. Since racism as a general condition is not necessarily a provable fact, it is not considered true knowledge. This failure to acknowledge experience as a legitimate form of knowing is problematic when developing alternative pedagogical approaches which are experiential in nature and integrates native science and indigenous knowledge. And so when we look at the impacts of research and policy into practice, those are some of the considerations that I like to look at when developing programs. Some further points of discussion, so over the next couple of days that I'm thinking that we might want to ponder is when doing research, developing policy, and engaging in a process of nurturing good health and well-being. Minova Matswin, to live a good life, it's very important. And the four statements that I think that are very important to consider, and when I say consider, I mean considerate of all things, of all living beings. So when we walk forward into future, we consider an infinite number of generations ahead of us that we're building the future for, and our infinite number of generations from the past is pushing us forward. So we have that support of the historical lineage of what runs through our blood to move us forward for the future generations. So the environmental conditions under which individuals make decisions to develop and chart their own course is a consideration, and to broadly define that to be inclusive of the spiritual environment. The impact of the individual on environment. So not only do environments impact individuals, but we do have impacts on the environments that we're in. And that's inclusive of all people that we engage, so children, adults, so on and so forth. We do have an impact on our environment. And examining the environmental context of social decision making, and I've heard a couple people say this in different ways, is Indigenous versus white. And sometimes, like Daryl said, maybe, how are we looking at this? Are we looking at this with the two eyes? With a forked tongue? Or 4 eyes? I got 4 eyes. So I'm doing pretty good. I got like a multi-dimensional perspective here. So, and also understanding the power of environments, because they are very powerful. Environments, when we walk into them, it's like, sometimes we don't know what we've walked into, and we have to navigate those waters with care. So, the question is, how do we act or respond and decide on the direction we take when working in the many realms of gambling, responsible gambling, problem gambling, harm minimization of gambling, and so on and so forth? Do we develop, so the question becomes, I said this is going to be kind of short, yeah, but do we develop our own charter? So with conversations of people that I've had here over the last couple of days, and actually going back to last year at the Australian conference, some of these questions came up. Do we engage one another as Indigenous people, nation to nation, establishing an international Indigenous gambling harm minimization network, such as this new website that is just being populated? This is a website that I have decided that I think there's a need for, and it's just being populated now. So it's the International Indigenous Network for Responsible Gambling. So if you have any information that you want posted on the site that's either Canadian, Australian, New Zealand, U.S. general bodies, or non-Indigenous stakeholders, I would welcome you to send them to me. I'll leave my email address with Leila, and she'll be able to pass that on. The reason I don't have them, I ran out of business cards, so I don't have that, and I didn't think I had to put it up here because I thought I had enough to sustain me through this conference. But there is a new website, and that there is a story behind the logo, and it has our four colors here, and it also is kind of spinning. So seeing the world as spinning, so it kind of integrates that sense of gambling, like a roulette wheel, like things are spinning out of control maybe, or in a certain way. And I really like to be who did the design of this. So it's something to ponder. And so the other question is, do we enter into international Indigenous memorandums of understanding between our nations? Again, it was a conversation that I had with somebody here, and I think we need to put things forth and on the table for us to discuss as Indigenous people. What is going to empower us the most? What's going to move us forward? How can we support each other in defining the research that we want done in our communities, in defining and having control over that research? Because we have had treatment centers in North America since 1969. In Ohio, they created the first treatment center for problem gamblers. That's almost 50 years ago. And so one of the questions that people ask is, how do you know that the research you're going to do is any better? How do we know that? Do we know that? I'm not sure if we do, but give us 50 years and we'll have part of that answer. We gave you 50 years. We gave them 50 years. We've given them a lot of time in terms of our being on Turtle Island. Over 500 years we've been colonized there. We've given them a lot of time to show that their goodwill, to show, to demonstrate that they're able to assist us when we're impoverished and suffering different social conditions, and they have failed at every attempt to try to address the issues that are most important to us. So to get us out of this situation of, I guess you've all said it, we have the highest rates of suicide. We have issues of housing, of sanitation, of unemployment, of disease, diabetes, suicide. The list goes on and on and on. We need to own and direct our own research. We need to own and direct our own institutions that will bring about substantial change in our communities. That's what we need. Is that what we need?
Yes.
Is that what we need?
Yeah.
Yes, we're going to move that way. We are going to move that way. I'm going to tell you as a group, and we're going to support each other. We will. I know we can do it, and we will. And that's where we're going to go. We're going to move that way, and we're going to begin, and it's going to be a good thing. Miigwech.